Engineer Gold Mines is focused on the exploration and development of the historic high-grade Engineer Gold Mine situated 32 kilometers southwest of Atlan, British Columbia. Engineer Gold Mines is fully permitted for surface and underground exploration with the drill program now underway. Engineer Gold Mines Limited trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol EAU. For more information, please visit us at engineergoldmines.com.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is home ownership consultant Ross Kay from the wealthyhomeowner.ca. Welcome back to the show, Ross.
And thanks for having me back, Jim.
Ross, we're beginning to hear the term fear of missing out once again in both the Vancouver and Toronto real estate markets. Do you see this irrational belief impacting the markets once again?
Every single housing market is dominated by an irrational belief. They're dominated by a groupthink that is generated from organized real estate. Every single talking point that has been released about housing markets from around about 1991 forward have been designed with the sole purpose to manipulate the consumer, manipulate the public. Any single point where organized real estate can use the public's ignorance against them happen, and fear of missing out is one of those abilities or consequences of organized real estate manipulating the public. You're hearing in Vancouver, so out your way, Jim. You are hearing already the fear of missing out is drive with multiple bids. Okay. Well, what the public doesn't know is that used car sales, used car dealers in the province of Ontario are regulated more with their advertising than what real estate agents are regulated. Used car dealers in 2020 in Ontario cannot advertise a car for a price lower than you can actually, or higher than you can actually buy lower than you can actually buy it for. In other words, if you put a sticker on a car for $5,000 and someone comes in and offers you $5,000, you have to sell it. Your pricing also has to be an all-in pricing. So you can't manipulate the consumer after they put the offer in on the car. Real estate agents don't have to follow those rules. Real estate agents can underprice property. Now, what I'll tell your listeners is that probably up until around 2010, the unethical practice of underlisting properties was generally warned against by every regulator in the country. But since the Great Recession, and in the couple of years immediately following, for some reason, provincial regulators pulled back on their enforcement of these rules. Although there's documentation available in every province in Canada telling real estate brokerages not to underlist properties in order to facilitate multiple offers or bidding wars, the practice now has become common. Sure, if a real estate brokerage underprices a property and a few home buyers see this as a tremendous deal, they may enter a bidding competition for the property. When it finally sells, folks, it doesn't mean that the price of that unit increased. What it means is that group of buyers, someone in that group decided to overpay for the property. Now, they could have paid market value, but odds are they would have overpaid, because in the process, the real estate agents have control of the process, and the blind type of bidding that goes on is utilized against all the home buyers bidding. That's because the home selling infrastructure in Canada is a seller beneficial one. It was designed only to benefit sellers up until around 2000 and has evolved the little tiny bit that it has since that time to hide the 70 years of deception the real estate brokerage industry perpetuated on the Canadian public when it was only a seller representation market. Your underpriced listings strategy is now a strategy. That strategy happened in Ontario first, and then it rolled out to British Columbia and will continue on to other provinces. This initially started down in the States, in the California area. Now, it was stopped from happening because the regulator said if you can't put a house that's false, misleading, and deceptive advertising to advertise a property at a price that a buyer can't buy it for. Now, there has always been an out in a real estate listing contract that said that the seller of the home does not have to sell the home even if a full price offer is brought in on it. But that contract also says that if someone brings a full price offer, that commissions will be payable. In other words, you don't have to sell your home, but you have to pay the commissions. That protected all players, all stakeholders in the transaction for about 60 years. Now, real estate brokerages are circumventing that by stroking a part of that clause out in the MLS agreement and then using the Competition Bureau complaint to justify it with the local MLS boards, who are so afraid of the Competition Bureau that they let it happen. But the flip side of fear of missing out is the failure of the Competition Bureau to enforce the standard advertising practices that every single product or service in Canada is subject to, except they're not enforcing it with house price. Thus, you're giving your local real estate boards, their brokerages, their salespeople, the realtors, an opportunity to create the illusion the market is busier than what it is. Fear of missing out is an illusion. They want the public to believe the market is hot. They either do that by saying inventory is so low it's going to put upward pressure on prices, or we're seeing bidding wars on condominiums in your neighborhood, or we're seeing house prices increase year over year. They're approaching the rapid pace they were a year, 2, 3 years ago when peak house price growth was going on. You never hear a single market commentary directed to benefit buyers. When housing prices were plummeting in the greater Vancouver area, the local real estate board, the local brokerages, the local realtors did not issue one press statement that the housing market was collapsing. Not one. There was not one headline in a newspaper in Vancouver that stated housing prices were now 28% less than what they were at their market peak. Never happened. Why? Why is it only on the upside that they talk about? Well, that's because you can't get fear in a population in terms of purchasing real estate unless it's always upward pressure. It's only after about 3 years into a housing correction where fear is used against sellers. So what that means, it's such a rare occurrence where an opportunity exists for the brokerage business to use fear on sellers to get them to reduce their listing price before prices drop further, that it's a skill almost no realtor ever develops. I never would have had the skill to understand how to truthfully, ethically get my sellers to underlist their home, not so that they would get multiple offers, but simply so they would beat the market in a collapsing market. Luckily for me, it was early in my career, and I learned that lesson over a 5-year period. Became very, very, very good at it. It wasn't the fear that we used data. We showed them where the price trends were going, and then the sellers would make a rational choice to be the lowest price house in the street. But in the vast majority of the market, generally speaking, over 70% of all markets are on the upward swing. The only reason they're on an upward swing for 70% of the time is because organized real estate has to have talking points to create fear, panic, missing out in the Canadian population. Everything that you're hearing today, whether it be in Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal, in other words, the 3 markets now that they're saying are in positive territory, it's all designed to manipulate you to buy a house. Every single talking point has been that way for over 40 years. The problem is people believe these talking points now. Not only does you believe them, the public, the government believes them, economists believe them, the press believes them. You have to remember, all of those people own homes. People in those job categories generally do not rent. It's disproportionately higher than even the regular population. Fear of missing out is a myth. It always has been a myth. It is used against you to have you looking at something yourself. You're looking at the listings on Realtor.ca. You are seeing in real time, prices aren't changing, but you're hearing that they are. You're reading in the paper that they are, even though you're watching Realtor.ca and you're seeing the houses are not selling. The prices are identical to what they were a month before. So let me end this conversation with this comment about fear of missing out, which also debunks that house prices rise in a month. Over 80% of the homes that are listed for sale on Realtor.ca today will still be for sale next month at this time for the exact same price they're asking today or less. Over 60% of them will be for sale 2 months later for either the exact same price they're asking today or for less. Not 3 months from now, over 50% of the homes you're looking at on Realtor.ca today will still be available for sale 3 months later that you will be able to buy at today's price or less. Housing prices do not go up in a month. You just believe that they do. When 80% of the homes on Realtor.ca today are still for sale a month later at the exact same price they are today or less, obviously prices didn't go up. But you believe that they did.
Ross, what's happening in real estate right now reminds me so much when you see a long lineup in front of a nightclub, and by the time you get inside, you find out there's hardly anybody there. They just held people up outside to make it look like they were busy.
You know something? This is one of the things when we're watching politics down in the States, Jim, from our perspective, okay? Because we're always looking for how the public is manipulated. Now, that is not a defeatist or a negative viewpoint. It just means that my professional career as a real estate salesperson was dominated by understanding that is how organized real estate approaches the market. It's how all my competitors approach the market. When you look down at the States today, when you see these politicians giving a speech, say it's a Bernie Sanders or an Elizabeth Warren or a who else is down there? That Buttigieg guy. Okay, if you look where the camera is sitting, it's close to them, and you hear the press, depending on what station you're listening to, talking about the crowd. Then you'll see Trump. The cameras will be the exact same position. Now, it kind of sounds louder in those venues, but the photograph, the image, the illusion is the same. It's only when you pull back. It's only on a rare occasion when someone pulls back and you see the size of the crowds that we're talking about, you realize you're being deceived. When you pull back and you see a full arena, and they pull back further and you see lineups around the arena to get in, you have to concede this Trump guy is drawing tremendous crowds to his speaking engagements. You also have to concede, when they pull back the camera, that Buttigieg, Saunders, Warren crew has little tiny crowds. Yet your perspective is they're equal. You know, the talking point by all of the Democratic favoring media are the same, and the talking points of the conservative media are all the same. And they're diametrically opposed in most circumstances. The only way you, as a viewer, have any understanding of crowd size in this situation is if someone gives you an overhead view. Real estate's exactly the same. They want the close-up. They want you to look at the one property that is sold. They don't want you to look at the 9 that didn't sell. They don't want you to look at the 80% that are still available the next month for the same price or less. They want you to believe housing prices increased in the month. Perspective is everything when it comes to real estate. Debunking that perspective with data or viewpoint, the camera way, way back, giving an overhead view instead of the close-up is the only way you can stop organized real estate from manipulating a decision that you are going to pay for your entire life, or the one that will provide an opportunity for you to retire wealthy and live a more unconstrained, happier, healthier life. Nothing I can do about it except try to pull back the camera from the biggest view possible and let you make up your mind for yourself.
We'll have more with Ross Kay right after this.
Cypress Development Corp. is developing a world-class lithium resource in the heart of Clayton Valley, Nevada. The size of the resource makes the Clayton Valley project a premier asset with the potential to impact the future of lithium supply. Cypress Development Corp. trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol CYP, the OTCQB, symbol CYDVF, and on Frankfurt, symbol C1Z1. For more information, please visit our website, cypressdevelopmentcorp.com.
Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, Recycling Trade Publications. Patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Ross Kay. Ross, last week, the new Toronto Regional Real Estate Board, rebranded TREB, issued a report for the 2020 housing market with a 10% year-to-year price increase being forecast, being the highlight. Do you see this outcome happening?
Well, this kind of goes back to the first segment that we had, the fear of missing out, and what are the talking points that organized real estate use to manipulate the public. And what I will say to your listeners is this. I would say that those issuing these reports actually believe what they're saying. They truly do believe what they're saying. I don't believe that they are evil people. I just believe they are ignorant to a topic that they're talking about. But they believe they're not ignorant. They really do. They believe it. What nobody asked the Toronto Regional Real Estate Board, which was forced to rebrand, dropping the Greater Toronto Area of branding because they were not representing Greater Toronto Area realtors. No more than the Real Estate Board of Greater Vancouver represented Greater Vancouver realtors. I believe Fraser Valley's in the Greater Vancouver area. So they don't represent them. So they were forced to rebrand years ago. The Toronto Real Estate Board has been forced to rebrand because they don't represent the realtors in the southwest corner of the Greater Toronto Area, Oakville, and Burlington. They never have, and they never will in the foreseeable future. But they come out with this statement on this official rebranding, new logo, new look, new color scheme, new everything, and a bright red disclaimer on the bottom of their website. Warning, historical comparison of data doesn't work because of geographical changes to what they're reporting on. It's in red on the bottom of their website. It used to be in little black lettering. Now it's in red. So there have been a few changes forced down the necks of the realtors in the Greater Toronto Area. And this is what happens when an outsider is available to critique the system. So now we have the Toronto Regional Real Estate Board dropping the Greater Toronto Area. And now their economists are using this bait switch. House prices are going to increase 10% year over year in 2020. On the same month, they claimed house prices year over year in January are up 12%. This is what their talking points are. They're trying to create fear in those home buyers who are on the sideline, who haven't bought, but their intention is to buy when the market is right and get them off the sidelines to buy right now today. And they will do everything in their power to convince those home buyers to act today so their members can earn commissions. It was set up precisely. But not a single reporter has asked the Toronto Regional Real Estate Board what is required to get a 10% year-over-year house price increase. Well, first of all, what the listeners in the Greater Toronto area should know is the Toronto Regional Real Estate Board has already knocked off $4,000 of reported sales price from 2019's figures. So now, instead of the $82,000 they have to record to get an increase of 10% in 2020, we're down to 78. That is a 2%, over a 2%, almost a 3% drop. Over a 3% drop. That's actually over a 4% drop in the required amount on the day that they release the report. No one asked them how much activity, how many trades, increase in trades, are going to be required to generate a 10% year-over-year trade. How much mortgage debt, how much trading volume is going to have to take place in order to get a 10% year-over-year change? How much mortgage debt is going to have to be secured to support 10% increase in prices in the year, which is $82,000 this year. You know, it's really easy to get a 10% change when house prices are $200,000. That's only $20,000. But to get a 10% change when prices are right, the average buyer is already spending $800,000, $820,000, means you have to get over an $80,000 increase. They were bragging about January's numbers, saying that prices were up year over year about 12%. I think that's the National Post reported that in the paper. Listeners can Google it. Toronto House Prices, National Post, Financial Post, they were claiming it's up 12%. Okay, so now they say by the end of the year, prices are going to be up $82,000 versus what they were at the end of 2019. How do you get there? Well, what I can tell your listeners is this. Real estate prices are a mathematical calculation. What I mean is, you can have an algorithm that tells you number of trades, volume, and a compositional mix. How those three have to intermingle to generate any kind of house price change. Your listeners are going to say, but Ross, we're seeing the houses and they're selling. No, you're not. Again, as we talked about in the first segment, you're looking at the close-up. You're looking at the crowds with the camera panned in only on the speaker. You're not looking at the camera that's in a drone floating over top of the arena, which is packed and the crowd's outside. When you get that view, it's totally different. Because instead of looking at the one house that sold, you have to look at the 9 that didn't. Those 9 that didn't are for sale the next month for the exact same price. 8 of the 9 are still for sale the following month. Depending on the month of the year and the category of home, the number of homes that you see the next month always changes. These things are all cyclical in a trading cycle. They all move. They have moved exactly the same year over year over year over year over year. And we don't look at years because we're housing market analysts. We don't look at calendar years. But all of your listeners are only thinking about what the real estate board told them, what the prices were at the end of 2019. And at the end of 2020, that's the only thing they're going to look at. They only look at the 2017, 2016, 2015, 2014, 2012, 2000, 1990 year-end average annual selling price, which are totally irrelevant to a housing market, but very explanatory in terms of the cyclicality of the market. In order for the Toronto Regional Real Estate Board members to have the average home buyer they're working with who actually purchases the home in the year 2020 result in an $82,000 year-over-year increase in the average selling price, you're going to have first-time buyers somewhere in March leave the market. First-time buyers are going to have to leave the market. Then you're going to have, but in February, March, and then sometime in March, April, they leave. In February, March, for the sake of the argument, make it an easier discussion, you need a surge of first-time buyers in the market. If that happens, the average selling price year over year will change, will not be 12%. maybe 6, maybe 7. Then they will leave the market. Okay, the number of first-time buyers is not endless. Okay, that there is a certain number of first-time buyers in the queue. They will become exhausted, and their share of sales will decrease, which will cause the average selling price to increase, which is what you had in 2016 in Vancouver, which you had in 2017 in Toronto. It's what you had in 2013 in Calgary. It's what has happened cycle after cycle after cycle after cycle in every single municipal real estate market or provincial real estate market in the country. So in order for that to happen, you've got to have those first-time buyers surge into the market early in the year. Through the multiplicity of sales, you're going to have more trade-up buyers result, which in a couple of months will have to record about a 25% year-over-year increase in average selling price. Then, immediately, the market's going to have to correct, and sales are going to have to start declining. And unless this is not exact, you're not going to record a 10% year-over-year price increase. In other words, the market will need to be correcting in order to reach a 10% year-over-year house price increase. Just the opposite of the theory thrown out by the Toronto Regional Real Estate Board. What I want your listeners to understand, you are being manipulated by organized real estate into believing something that simply isn't true. House prices do not change from month to month. It is illegal in Canada for any bank to present an appraisal in a court of law 30 days that was done at the start of the month and the end of the month that results in two different prices. The judge would send the appraiser back to redo the numbers because there is not a single court case in the history of Canada where that has ever resulted. Organized real estate can't make money. You are not going to pay a real estate broker $40,000 in real estate commissions to sell your $800,000 home. You won't do it. You have to be convinced that your home is increasing in value so much that you slough off spending $40,000. That's exactly how the system is built. They need to create the illusion of house price gain in order for you to sign a contract to pay their real estate commissions over the next 25 years. The system is not built for you to write the real estate broker a check for the services that they're providing you. The system is built to have the real estate commissions financed in your mortgage. The only way that system works is that if they can show house prices change is greater than what it really is. And then they just wait for the correction to take place silently, quietly, not reporting what's really going on. And after the damage is all done and the consumer is left in the sidelines, families destroyed, they step back in and say the market's getting busier again. You can start buying again. In order to receive a 10% year-over-year house price change in Toronto, there's going to have to be a surge of first-time buyers, which sets off an increase in sales numbers, total sales numbers. Probably, for the sake of the argument, let's say that they happen through till July. And then from July forward, you've got to see a fall-off in the market, fall-off in sales. Sales have to decrease year-over-year. If that doesn't happen, it's mathematically impossible to show a 10% house price change. It is mathematically impossible. The Greater Regional Real Estate Board, I think right now, is trading their trading volume on an annual basis. Hold on, Jim, just let me have a look here. Is around 73 billion. So the Toronto Realtors are right now, their trading volume on an annual basis is about at 73 billion. To get a 10% house price gain, you need a trading volume of almost double that. So in other words, if we're doing like the increase. So if the increase, they're looking for to get a 10% house price gain year over year, because you have to remember, the market rolled over had already been, the way that the sales, the compositional mix of sales was reporting at the end of December had already been increasing, shifting towards trade-up buyers for the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 months. So now to catch a year-over-year gain, technically, the way that the real estate board's reporting it, you would have to have $82,000 gain year over year. The real estate market only ever reported that kind of an increase At no time in its history. So for the Toronto Real Estate Board, did it hit? Hold on a second before I say that. At the peak of the market, did it hit it? No, it did not. So even at the peak of the market in the spring of 2017, the compositional mix of sales was not creating that kind of house price growth, house price illusion. So what they're saying is going to happen, for that to happen, would be the first time in the history of the Toronto Regional Real Estate Board's existence. It has never happened before. There is no other housing market in Canada where that is even mathematically possible. There's not enough trading volume to support it. So take what you want to believe with a grain of salt. I can promise you there is not enough cash mortgage debt that can be booked that would record a 10% increase in the value of every home in the GTA on average. There is not enough money in all of Canada to create that kind of increase in the value of all the homes that exist in the GTA on average. It is a mathematical impossibility. That said, at the end of the year, if the market turns over mid-year and first-time buyers had exhausted the market at the end of the first quarter, the real estate board may be able to tell you they had an $82,000 year-over-year gain.
We'll have more with Ross Kay right after this.
Avon Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia and the Yukon, trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the OTCQB, symbol ABNAF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Avon's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at avonresources.com.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Ross Kay. Ross, Strata Insurance is becoming a huge issue in BC, and a listener was wondering what your views on this topic are.
Great question. My views are very simple. If you purchased a strata in the last 2 years and your real estate brokerage did not disclose to you that your insurance, or worse, your deductible, was going to go up, let's say more than inflation, you should be going back to your real estate brokerage and asking them for 10 years of that increase back in cash. It's 2020, folks. If you're buying a strata, a condo, anywhere in Canada, and you haven't looked at the condominium documents, the strata documents, you haven't reviewed the status of the corporation that you're buying into. If your real estate sales representative did not do the looking for you, if they failed to do their due diligence in researching this, it's time to make them return part of their commission, because this should not be happening. If you're one of the unlucky few who wake up to find out that there's a $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 deductible, rendering your ability even to cover that deductible impossible, then you should be suing for damages if you purchased a condo in the last 2 years. Why do I say 2 years? There is no condominium strata that overnight wakes up and says, oh, we're going to have to increase our insurance. We are going to have to increase our deductible. The insurance company doesn't necessarily have to agree to this. I'm saying there's no strata that has to agree to this. These decisions were already in the works. There was an underlying condition of the strata or condo corporation that was setting you up for this situation to occur. And if your real estate broker hadn't warned you in writing and had you sign off that you had been notified, you can seek simple relief in small claims court. What's your small claims court limit in BC right now, Jim? Do you know?
Pardon?
You know what the limit is you can sue somebody for?
For what? When? What court?
In small claims court.
In
small
BC, it's $25,000.
Right. Okay. So, in Canada, in Ontario, it's been increased to 20. So it's basically, for the sake of the argument, it's the same. That's enough money to recover your shortage in insurance fees. Now, if you've been in a condominium for over 2 years and you didn't know this was coming, it's Either A, you weren't educated as a condominium or strata owner to what you should be looking at. You weren't actively engaged with your board of directors. You probably didn't vote in the board of for the board of directors, and you probably didn't read your condominium document. And you should be doing those things, folks. If you're going to buy a strata or a condominium, this is part of what a responsible owner should be doing. The reason why I say responsible owner is those folks that are seeing these deductibles in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, even a $50,000 deductible, let's be honest, it can wipe you out. It's also going to do the following. If your building has a deductible of this nature, or your insurance fees are tripled because of whatever the situation is, your ability to even sell your property is going to be greatly diminished. And because you're aware of these increases, you are required by law to disclose them. You can't hide them. They become a latent defect because you didn't disclose it. You knew about it, but you didn't disclose it. You have to disclose these things. Now, I will say, from my former sales career, I would never let a condominium buyer that I was working with do the due diligence on a condo. I would do it all for them. I would know what building they're buying in. I would know what the condominium rules and regulations were, and I would know what the financials were in that condominium or strata. I would also discuss it with their lawyer prior to closing so that they're aware of what I told them and what I didn't tell them, because I never wanted to be in trouble. When you tell the consumer the truth, you're no longer just a salesperson, you're a trusted advisor. Yes, it's harder to sell houses as a trusted advisor. In other words, you just can't walk out and sell somebody a house. You have to sell them the right house. You have to give them all the information possible so that they can make an informed decision. That takes a lot more work. It's a lot harder. You can't sell them every house. You can't just go out and sell them the house that they say, oh, we love this house. Didn't you notice the artwork? It's beautiful. Oh, that house was beautiful. And then you say, wait a second. You've talked about a dining room table that your grandmother gave to you since the day that I met you 3 months ago. Now you're telling me you want to buy a house where that dining room table won't fit because you think it's beautiful. That's what ethical sales is like. You tell people. You bring these items to the forefront. The strata commentary about insurance and deductibles are just the opposite. And I will express it how I express it. You had a greedy real estate agent who wanted to earn commissions so desperately. Remember, the median 50% of Canadian realtors do not sell one house in a year. They have you at their mercy. They will slice and dice you to make a sale. And they'll smile all the time they're doing it because they don't think there's anything wrong with what they're doing. There is no way that any strata buyer should have purchased a condominium, an apartment, without knowing with at least what the next 2 to 5 years are going to look like in terms of your costs. It's time to hold those who have misled you accountable. If your insurance is going up more than inflation, or your deductible is now hitting astronomical levels, you are in great financial distress and you don't realize it. Your property value is decreased. Your saleability, in some circumstances, will be zero. You won't be able to sell the unit. The buyer who buys your unit won't be able to pay as much because they have to pay higher insurance rates. And since insurance rates are often included in the calculation for qualification of a mortgage, that means they can't qualify for as big of a mortgage. That's what the reality is of this strata discussion. And when we hear these comments about the new building forms that are coming out, you always have to be wary of these because although well-intended and they could be, great decisions for a new style of building construction, they can also be problematic, as everyone in Vancouver knows with the leaky condos. These timber frames may be a great idea. When I do the research on it, we have a consensus that it's probably going to be okay. We can't guarantee it. Asbestos was a commonly used form of insulation in Canadian homes. Formaldehyde, a commonly used form of insulation in Canadian homes. Aluminum wiring, commonly installed in Canadian homes. Subsequently started fires because the outlets weren't the same. Kinetics piping, commonly installed in Canadian homes in the last decade, that subsequently were flooded entire homes because the pressure fittings weren't designed properly. When you're buying into a strata, you need to see the condominium documents, the strata documents. You need to see the financials for the strata, the condominium. You really should be attending at least one meeting before of the board before you agree to it. Or at worst, you should knock on several doors of neighbors in several levels and ask them their opinion of what is happening with the strata, the condominium. Because you're going to bump into some person who loves to talk, who's going to sit down and give over a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, or a beer, and they're going to go over every single little detail about the building that they live in. And you may think that it's petty, you may think that it's silly, but I'll tell you, those people are the most valuable person any home buyer of a strata or condominium will ever meet, because they know the things that you should at least be told about before you enter into an agreement to move you and your family into that strata or condominium.
Ross, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Jim.
My guest has been home ownership consultant Ross Kay from thewealthyhomeowner.ca. If you have any questions for Ross, you can send them to info@housestreet.com. Find us on Twitter @HouseStreet, our YouTube channel, Talk Digital Network. We're also on Facebook. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on HouseStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HouseStreet.com radio is a production of House Street Media Incorporated.